John here from Fast Films, and today we're going through a 2007 comedy-drama movie called Meet Bill. The movie opens with Bill in soliloquy of a life he doesn't enjoy. While he's deep in thought, a student rushes into the toilet block and begs Bill not to tell the principal of his presence. The principal comes in and asks Bill if he saw any student, which Bill denies. The principal then leaves and the student comes out, offering Bill a tip for his loyalty, which Bill rejects. After a donation show from Bill's father-in-law, Mr. Jacoby, Bill walks down the hallway and accidentally hits Jess, his wife, and Chip, someone Jess might be dating secretly. Bill is suspicious but acts calm. In the evening, Mr. Jacoby introduces Bill to his partners, one of who urges Bill to buy into a donut franchise. During the dinner party, Bill drops his cell phone number after calling someone regarding the franchise. The next day, the student from yesterday who is nicknamed The Kid walks into Bill's bank, asking for mentorship. Bill asks why and the conversation digresses into bank tours. Bill gets home and overhears Jess on a phone call. His suspicion arises and he is almost caught eavesdropping. He grabs a chocolate bar in the kitchen and Jess joins him there. He asks who was on the phone with her and she says it's her mother, but he doesn't believe her. A brief conversation goes sideways for both parties and she leaves him in the kitchen with a...
This guy looks like a good degenerate, isn't it?
A brief conversation goes sideways for both parties.
Look at him.
And she leaves him in the kitchen with a smile on her face. Later that night, while watching TV, she tells him to cut down on sugar. They eventually have another discussion that makes him tell her not to be so dependent on her father. Later on, Bill is preoccupied with thoughts of the past few days, still obsessing over Chip. A fellow worker walks into his office and briefs Bill about his next few hours and his schedule for Saturday. Bill gives 3 students who had been waiting a short tour and afterwards attends a meeting with potential investors. Later, he stops by a minibar where he meets an old schoolmate, Charlie Sherman. They enjoy some male bonding. Bill finds his way to his brother's place, whose name is Sergeant, and they discuss Bill's father-in-law. Bill notices Chip's program advertisement playing on TV. He asks to borrow his brother's video camera, which he plants in Jess' room. On a Saturday, they go hunting. Bill isn't pleased as he hates hunting. After hunting, Bill, the surgeon, and her husband go back home to watch the clip from the security camera.
Guys, I have to stop the video. Guys, I cannot be the only one. It is comical. As I think this guy's haircut is just funny. It's just such a piece of shit. I like the guy. I think he's handsome. His haircut is so dark. It looks like he's wearing a toupee.
From the security camera, Bill is nearly caught by his wife, but he scales through. Sadly, it's true. Jess was cheating with Chip and this annoyed Bill. In the next scene, he storms to their house and confronts Jess, who goes on the defensive by saying he invaded her privacy. He refuses to give her the tape when she demands for it. He drives over to where Chip is having a live show and punches him in public. He's taken into custody and the scene goes viral. He is labeled as the deranged fan of Chip Johnson because of the cutout image of Chip he kept in his wallet. The next day, when Bill is applauded by the students as he makes his way up. After a program Bill anchored, a student named John walks up to Bill and says it's fine to still keep him as a mentor, although Bill objects. John cuts off group mentoring with Sarah and Chu, the other 2 students, choosing to stay with Bill. By the way, the tape has gone wild at Bill's office, but they all try to hide it from Bill's father-in-law. Later, Bill reaches his home and he's still not pleased with Jess, who is only concerned about Chip's reputation and hers. She walks away and says she's going to talk to Chip about his tape. In the next scene, Chip opens his door. He gets surprised to see Bill and Jess and asks that Bill leave his property. This makes Bill attack Chip again, dragging him out of his house. Bill's fight with Chip appears on the news and Bill gets locked up again. Sergeant bails him out. The next morning, Bill's friend named Paul invites him to again. Sergeant bails him out. The next morning, Bill's friend named Paul invites him to go swimming. He declines, saying it is too early. After much persuasion, he opts in and dresses up for it. He feels relieved as he swims. The next day at work, while on a site inspection for the donut factory, random people shout at him because of his famous issues with Chip. The owners of the factory named the Whitman factory also request to see Jess, but he lies that she's sick and would not be able to attend their meeting. They then decide to see his operations and he then takes them to his office. Waiting for him in the office is the kid, who Bill is still mentoring, and Bill introduces them to each other. As they converse about Bill joining the Sweet Donuts business company, he gets a knock on the door. He goes out to answer the person at the door and it turns out to be Sarah, his coworker. Sarah complains about them exempting her from the hunting they all went for the last weekend, saying it was discriminatory. Bill sarcastically affirms it and hurriedly gets back into the office. They finally conclude their discussion and end their meeting. Later on, Bill sees the kid trying to fix a billboard where Bill's face is, and this makes Bill consent to them going out together. They go to a shopping mall where Bill gets a telescope among other things. At night, he's seen spying on Jess with his telescope as she has a discussion with Chip about the tape. Jess thinks the tape brings Chip to the spotlight positively, but he thinks otherwise. As Chip leaves the house, Bill continues to spy on her, even as she is with nothing on. He then places a call through to her, asking to pick her up the next night for dinner. He later notices his student also watching. As Bill struggles with the kid to stop watching, Jess looks down from her window and sees Bill. This pisses her off and Bill starts to apologize, saying he came to get his clothes. She gets him his clothes and tells him to stop spying. Later that night, he prepares for the next night with Jess. He also goes swimming. Bill accepts to go out to the shopping mall with the kid the next day after school. They plan to get new clothes for Bill and a new girl to make his wife jealous. The kid tells a lingerie salesgirl named Lucy about it and asks her to pose as the girl. The next night, Bill goes to pick Jess up for dinner. He also gets her some collections. At the dinner table with Jess' family, John Jr. argues with Bill about not being useful. Mr. Jacoby then announces his run for mayor, and tells them all to behave like family. Both Jess and Bill then agree to go out for coffee. As they talk, Lucy comes by the table and exchanges pleasantries with Bill, telling him to come by the store the next night. This gets Jess quite uncomfortable as she asks about Lucy when he drops her off. Meanwhile, Chip is seen at the house waiting for her. Before she leaves Bill, Jess gives him a peck and this gets Chip bewildered. The next day, Bill takes Lucy and the kid to the sweet donut store and Lucy poses as his wife. At the store, the kid causes trouble with a customer and Bill harshly talks to him about the struggles of making money. This causes the kid to stay mute as they leave the factory. In the next scene, Bill, the kid and Lucy set up some fireworks during a picnic. The kid frightens Bill with one while he's deep in thought and they begin to play with the fireworks. Later on, they go to prepare the venue for the program. Sergeant comes in the meantime and argues with Bill. In the next scene, Jess stops by at Bill's workplace to ask if Bill would be free that evening, claiming she came to see her dad. After having so much fun, Bill then drives back to his tent in his brother's backyard with Lucy and her friend. The kid requests to sleep over at Bill's place and he reluctantly accepts. The kid then urges Bill to make out with Lucy's friend that night and change his story of sticking to just one person. On getting home, they all begin to dance, passing smoke around until they get high. Lucy tried to attract Bill afterward and makes out with him. In the next scene, at the golf course, Bill sees Sarah coming in with Jim and James. He also sees Chip and Jess and quickly goes to tell the kid and Lucy that they have to get Jess out of the place. He then grabs Lucy's hand and pulls her along while he tries to call Jess, who is speaking with Chip. Just then, Chip exerts the restraining order against Bill, and two security men grab Bill to throw him out. After this, Bill drives carelessly and suddenly steers off-road when some animals run into the middle of the road. He's badly injured and pops out of the car. The fireworks in the boot are then triggered and they shoot up into the sky. The attention of the attendees is called to the site and they go to see what's wrong. Bill flees the scene immediately and the kid later comes to pick him up in a golf cart and takes him to the hospital. In the next scene, the kid goes to a pub with Lucy. They agree to be friends and Lucy even pays to be friends with him because she says that she likes hanging out with him. Later on, Jess later visits Bill at the hospital where he explains to her that he is already fed up of depending on Jacoby for a livelihood. He tells her he loves her but their lives suck by depending on her father's money. He also declines when Jess asks if she can give him a ride. In the next scene, Bill goes home and looks himself up in a mirror. He cuts his hair low and shaves. He changes his wardrobe as well. He later goes to tender his resignation at Jacoby's office, stating directly that he doesn't belong in his company. Jess's father agrees and supports his actions so far. Bill goes to meet with the Whitmansbit with a different motive than expected. He surprisingly finds that his franchise has been given to him after Jess convinced the company. But Bill doesn't want the franchise anymore. He later confesses to Jess that he was going to call off the franchise. He then lets Jess have the franchise instead and says he doesn't want to be the donut guy, the bank guy or the deranged fan guy, but he just wants to be himself. So, they both agree to separate peacefully and they put up the house for sale. Up next, Bill goes to meet the kid at school. He's not going to be his mentor anymore since he had left the company. Bill bids him farewell, saying he doesn't know exactly where he'll go. He promises to keep in touch and asks the kid to check his locker. The kid goes and delightfully finds fireworks explode and blow up his locker.
Do this movie recap next xQcl link.
Guys, we've been clickbaited, isn't it?